USC come if they can. It's a long trip, I think, to Ottawa. But it's really great to have her here because she's going to give us a bit of a global perspective on all this seed stuff and talk to us a bit about preserving seeds and biodiversity in the world and about food security, I think. So thank you very much, Julia.
Thanks. Just before I get started, is there anyone who didn't get a blue card when they came in? We're just going to do a little game workshop. So I'm going to make sure everyone can participate. Anyone over here? Okay, so before I get started, I just want to do a really quick introduction. My name is Julia Laforge. I work for USC Canada. I'm originally from Saskatchewan, and I moved to Ottawa to go to school, and then got this wonderful job with this wonderful organization that I'm going to talk to you about today. My presentation is about mainly about the work that USC Canada does and why it's important. And you'll see in the presentation that a lot of the work that we do is international, but we're also starting some Canadian projects as well, which we're really excited about. Feel free to ask questions at any point during the presentation. If you have any burning questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And at the end as well, we'll have time for some questions. I just want to know a little bit about you guys before I get started. Is anyone here a gardener? Is anyone here a farmer? Couple. Okay, great. What else? Has anyone started any plants yet this spring? Oh, great. That's exciting. Awesome. Okay, so here's the presentation. There we go. So there's this great organization, or these two guys, I guess. They're called Face Your Farmer. They're doing a project right now where they're traveling across Canada, meeting different farmers and helping the public sort of get to know their farmers. And so this was something that they put together. It says, in our society, growing food has become the most radical of acts and is truly the only effective protest that one can and will overturn the corporate powers that be. By the process of directly working in harmony with nature, we do the one thing most essential to change the world. We change ourselves. So I thought that was a good introduction to this presentation. So USC Canada started in 1945 as a Unitarian Service Committee. We were founded by Lotta Hitchmanova. Some of you may remember her commercials, 56 Brook Street. Our goal then was to help people affected by war and conflict, and we would send food and clothing overseas. However, in 1988-89, we were approached by Dr. Malaku in Ethiopia, and he asked if we could help him on a project to protect the seeds in Ethiopia because of the famine that was happening. They were finding that many people were being forced to eat the seeds that they were supposed to be saving to plant next year. And so a lot of the diversity of seeds was disappearing, and he was very concerned about this. So we agreed to help him, and since then we started our flagship project, Seeds of Survival, which has been translated into many countries in Africa in particular. So now our goal has sort of shifted from that, helping people directly affected by conflict, to promoting sustainable livelihoods through agro-biodiversity. So we work in 10 countries overseas, 4 countries in Africa, 3 in Asia, and 3 in South and Latin America. And as I mentioned, we also have a project starting just now in Canada. Our projects vary in size and what exactly is happening on the ground. I'll give a few examples in this presentation. But for the most part, what we do is we find other organizations to partner with in those countries. So it's not, Canadian staff necessarily working there all the time. It's local experts as well, which we think is really, really important. So we recently went through sort of a revisioning process and determined that there are 5 key areas where we want to really focus our work. The first one is seed security and diversity, which I mentioned already. But of course, part of that is also climate change adaptation and mitigation, so helping farmers adapt to changing climate. We also do a lot of work on community-based economic development, particularly in rural communities, so that can mean helping establish a farmers market in some cases. We also do a lot to promote gender equality. We find that the work that women do on farms around the world is really important and isn't always recognized. And so that's something that we really work hard on. And then the final one is engaging young farmers, making sure that they are informed and want to stay on the farm, because we think that it's really important to keep the next generation involved in agriculture as well. And this is going to be a bit hard to see, so I'll try to explain it in brief, but it's essentially it's a perspective on agriculture, using sort of the 3 pillars of sustainability, as you may have heard of them, so social, economic, and environmental, to explain how food production is a combination of all 3. So from economic, you have income, you have marketing, and you have trade in agriculture. On the social side, you have health, you have gender, traditions, social interactions, and culture. And then in environmental, you have the soil, the water, climate, and biodiversity. And when all those 3 combine, you have food production, hopefully a sustainable system for food production. So I have a short film that I want to just show you that explains a little bit about the development of our work in Ethiopia. Hopefully it will work. If not, we'll do something else. Do you have internet?
I can get you internet.
That's fine. We can do something else. Sure. Oh yeah, thanks.
Are you positive? Because I can tether it to my phone and it'll work.
It's all right. You can watch the film afterwards. Actually, what we'll do, I think now, is we'll play the game instead. So hopefully everyone has a blue card. If not, okay, good. Getting one? Good. Okay, so the goal of this game is really just to explain the importance of biodiversity on farms. So everyone has in front of them the characteristics of their seed. You are now a seed on a farm. You could be any kind of seed. You could be, you know, a wheat seed. You could be an apple seed. You could be a, I don't know, grapefruit seed. Anything you want. So take a minute to just read the 4 description of your seed on your card, and then I'm going to ask everyone to stand up, because you've all been planted in the ground. So you are all now viable seeds that have been planted. So can everyone please stand up? And I'm going to describe to you what's happening on the farm this year. So in this first year, spring arrives pretty late, and while the farmers find that they have enough water in their fields, the farmers find that there is enough moisture in the field, so everybody who has early germination, wait a second, let me start that over again. Okay, spring is late this year. I jumped ahead to the first year. Okay, spring is late this year, so there's too much water in the fields. And so anyone who has early germination has to sit down, because you aren't going to survive this year. All right. This summer, if you have early germination, please sit down.
Okay, we've got 2 different seeds, right?
No, you're 1 seed. All those 4 characteristics are all 1 seed. Wow, wow. Okay, that was bad. Summer continues with it's a cool summer, so there's very few days that go above 25 degrees. So those of you who have germination at 25 degrees have to sit down. Oh, you're all still okay? Good. Finally, there's an excessive amount of rain this year, much above the normal, during the spring and summer. So all of you who do not have tolerate waterlogging have to sit down. So if you have tolerate waterlogging, you can stay standing. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 11 seeds left at the end of this year. Okay, so this time the farmer, he's not a seed saver yet. So what he's going to do is he's going to buy a whole new set of seeds this winter, and he's going to start with a whole new set of seeds. So can everyone please stand up again? We're going to do this again with different climate conditions. Okay, so this summer we have an early spring. And there's beautiful weather and lots of sun and lots of heat. So everyone can stay standing. You're all okay. The summer continues with temperatures fairly high and very little rain. So those of you who are not drought resistant, please sit down. So unless you have a card that says drought resistance. Finally, the fall starts very nicely, but there is a sudden frost in the end of September. So all of those who are not resistant to cold must sit down. So we fared a little bit better, I think. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so a little bit better this year. All right, so that's the end. You guys can all sit down. Thank you for participating. So essentially, the goal of this exercise is just to show you that it's very important to have a wide variety of seeds on your land, and that biodiversity really helps protect the farmers from different types of climate situations. If you can imagine all of you were one single seed, maybe one of the seeds that had early germination, you're done at the very beginning of the season. So that's one of the things that's really important for us in our work. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about some of the work that we do overseas. So oftentimes when we think of potatoes, we think of sort of round, brown things. But as you can see, potatoes come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and colors. And Bolivia is one of the homes of potatoes. So the work that we do there is really based around helping to protect that biodiversity of potatoes. Bolivia is also a large center of quinoa growth. And so this is an example of a project that we've done where we took soil that was not in very good condition. It's very saline. And this is sort of the original, what was growing here. And we'd been told that you couldn't grow any sort of crop there. It wouldn't do anything. But we managed to find this variety of red quinoa that did just fine. As you can see in this picture, it grew just fine. So, it's important to protect those varieties that are maybe less well known, because as you can see, under certain conditions, they really thrive. This is an example of potatoes again. There are a couple different varieties of potatoes in here, as you can probably see by the different colors. So essentially what happened is while one of our staff was visiting in Bolivia, there was a sudden frost. And so they went out to the fields the next day, and they saw that some of the potatoes had not done so well, that the tops were completely frozen, and others had done very well. Anybody want to guess which is the native variety and which is the introduced hybrid? So this is, you can see the bright green here is obviously the native species, and this was an introduced hybrid. A hybrid that was bred for conditions like this, and not for growing in the Andes. So clearly it wasn't going to do very well, especially in an area where you're growing on steep mountainsides and where a variation in 100 feet of elevation can mean a widely different climate. Another example is the work that we've done in Honduras. We started working there shortly after Hurricane Mitch in 1993. We found out about an organization there called FIPA through the work of a professor at the University of Guelph who was working with them, and she told us about this project, and then we became involved. It's really exciting. It's essentially a way to encourage farmers to be their own scientists, to make careful notes about what's growing, what the growing situation is like, what the crops look like, how they've done, and helping them to develop breeds that maybe do better. So they're very careful, they take great notes, and then they'll sort of cross varieties to help develop a new variety. So it can take multiple generations to get what you want, but they're doing this work mostly on their own. They have some assistance from scientists at local universities, but that's mostly they are the ones giving the direction in terms of what types of crops they want. So instead of the system that you often see now, which is where science and industry tell farmers you want to grow this, farmers are saying to the scientists, we're looking for this in the corn, for example. Can you help us crossbreed and get that variety developed? They're also doing lots of work on composting and improving their soil. Again, they're getting assistance from the scientists for expertise, but really it's important for them to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes as a community. So they formed sort of agriculture, almost clubs in their communities where they have opportunities to do workshops and sit together and learn and share information. We've also done a lot of work to help establish community seed banks in all of our projects. This is an example from Ethiopia here, but this one is from Honduras. It's really important that all those varieties of corn, so for example, if we're developing a newer variety that maybe isn't as tall or is a slightly different color, that we continue to maintain the original varieties as well. Because again, something may happen, change in the climate or something like that, where that variety that you've now just developed is no longer any good, and you want to be able to make sure that you have the original still available. That's called the land race. So farmers bring their seeds here, they can store it here, they can share it if they want to, if their neighbors maybe have a similar situation and they're looking for a new variety or something like that to try on their land, they can do that as well. And in fact, in Honduras, they have developed a different variety of corn. They really like the white corn in the region where we're working. They just find it more attractive. However, the white corn that they were initially growing was quite tall, and so with all these hurricane gale-forced winds, they would blow over all the time. And so they worked on crossbreeding and developing a shorter variety that was still that light color. So they're very proud of this variety. In fact, they go around to seed fairs and sell it to people. So it's another way for them to make money as well. And in fact, we've also worked with farmers. This is Louisa, and when we first started working with her, she was, she mostly stayed on the farm and was kind of shy. And eventually, through the work, working with her community and getting to know people, she sort of became really involved in policy work. And this is her at a rally against GMOs in Honduras. So she got to the point where she was comfortable talking to the media, and so it's just one of the ways that the work that we do in terms of supporting communities can become a lot more than that as well. It can become, sort of a policy issue. Another area where we work is Nepal. We work in Quinoa, which is way up in the north, quite remote, and then we also work in some of the more central regions. We've been there for quite a few years, and so a lot of the work that we were originally doing there was around educating women, developing or establishing wells. We also had a project with stoves so that they would, I'm sure you've heard about the situations where they have smoke in their houses and stuff like that, so making sure they had the right kind of stoves in their houses. So this is just an example of a home in Nepal. So in the bottom is where they keep the livestock. The family lives in the middle level, and then the top two levels are for storage. And it's kind of hard to see, but there is a chimney. I think it's sort of in here somewhere. So that the cooking that's done on the main floor, the chimney takes it outside.
So what is that? They're made out of logs? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I think so. You can see sort of the stone on the sides there, and then I think they use logs as like the floor. In Nepal, very different growing situation than in Canada. They actually are able to grow things all year round. So you can see some of the different crops that they're doing here. Again, they're doing a lot of terracing on steep slopes. One of the other things that they've done here is they do a lot of intercropping. Again, trying to have sort of an insurance policy against whatever the weather might throw your way. So here they're growing, I think it's sorghum and millet together. So if one doesn't do well, at least you'll have something in the end. And there's another example of a village in Nepal where here what they're doing is using every little bit of sunshine that they have. So they're drying a variety of, here they're drying some seeds, here they're drying some vegetables for storage. And then up here there's a solar panel, over there, there's a garden, so they're really just trying to maximize, they don't get a lot of very sunny days, so they're trying to maximize the efficiency of their sunny days. In Nepal, like many places, women are doing a lot of the agriculture. So here you can see some young girls cleaning some of the wheat. And then here she's winnowing the wheat as well to get all the extra chaff out of it. So in Nepal, similar to as in Honduras, they're doing projects where the community gets together and works on sort of developing varieties and making sure that other varieties are being used. So this is kind of like a demonstration plot, except that it's not, you know, one person responsible for it. Everybody in the community participates in growing the vegetables. So these vegetables, in Nepal it's been a bit of an issue. They've lost a lot of the seed-saving knowledge and the diversity, and so these seeds are being brought in from other regions in Nepal, from outside of this particular community, and so they're making sure that these varieties are suitable for the growing conditions here. So, you know, there's a couple varieties of beans and buckwheat here, and they're growing them all and making notes about which variety seems to be doing the best, so that in following years they can decide which one they want to grow in their own home. And here's just an example of some of the women doing that type of work, checking on the plots, seeing how things are going. In terms of establishing rural economies, having kitchen gardens is part of that. Previous to when we had moved in there, again, they didn't have a lot of seeds available. They were having to bring in a lot of food, so helping them to be a little bit more self-sufficient and have a wider variety of vegetables available to them has been really important. So now I'm going to move into sort of the Canadian context as well. There's a variety of, well, people who are here today, in fact, selling seeds and doing this type of work. I often feel that we have a lot to learn from the projects overseas in terms of, you know, that sort of sense of community and sharing all that information and getting together to grow things and to, you know, make notes about developing varieties and things like that. So people like this are getting together and doing some of that work already. There's also some sort of non-seed sellers, non-vendors, who are doing a similar type of work. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Seeds of Diversity Canada. There's also things like community garden networks. There's Just Food in Edmonton. There's some places have seed sanctuaries or that type of thing. So in Kingston, there's actually one that's in a convent, I think, yes, that the nuns used to save seeds, and so they have actually quite a diversity of seeds there as well. So that's an example. I don't know if you guys know of any other examples, particularly in Alberta, that would sort of fit under that, where communities are getting together to grow things and to protect biodiversity. Anybody know of any?
I know there's one in the Edmonton area.
Okay.
There's one.
Okay.
I come from Morganville, and some of us there contribute.
Great. Yeah.
To it.
Okay.
Plus the Bolivian Potatoes.
Yes, I was going to say.
Has that has largest country.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of botanical gardens across the country are I think they've always done it, especially with flowers and those types of things. Now they're getting more interested in vegetable varieties as well. So, yeah. And we've just started a project as well. We're working with Seeds of Diversity Canada and a few other folks as well on Canadian seed security. So at this stage, we're basically trying to find out a little bit more about the seed system in Canada. We're looking for information from gardeners and farmers on what sort of resources they need so that they can save seeds better. So for some people, it's a lack of information. Lots of people that I've talked to said, you know, I'd really love to save seeds, I just don't know how. So we've heard that from a lot of people, so we're going to be doing some workshops in the summer and fall on seed saving. But for farmers as well, I know that the situation can often be different. And there's concerns about bulk, having enough seeds so that you can grow, a half acre of tomatoes if that's what you're wanting. So for most Canadian farmers, if they want organic seed in particular, they're often buying from the States. So those types of things. We're really just wanting to create a more vibrant seed system in Canada, helping to keep those seed producers that we had listed on there earlier, keeping them going and making sure that everyone, from gardeners to farmers, have access to local seed. Another kind of neat example from Canada is farmer and seed company collaborations. So this is Robin. She's one of the board members at USC Canada, and she runs a farm out in BC. And they grow out seeds for the seed company, which is Stellar Seeds. So they know each other and they trust each other, so they know that, because one of the issues with growing seeds is that you can't have similar varieties. Sometimes you're worried about cross-pollination. You might end up with some seed that wasn't what you intended to get. So, Robin's not so close to Stellar Seeds that she has to worry about that, so she can grow certain varieties for them every year and make sure that the seed company continues to be able to provide those seeds. And this example is from near Ottawa. There's a farmer there, her name is Greta, she's down there. And this past year, she did the Great Tomato Trial, or she participated in the Great Tomato Trial. She has something like 200 varieties of tomatoes that she was growing. And again, she wasn't too worried about saving the seeds this year, so she was able to just grow them all in really close proximity, which normally she wouldn't be able to do. But she really just wanted to make sure that they were all still viable seeds. And also, at the end of the season, she did a great taste testing where people were able to come and comment on which was their favorite variety, and then she was sort of able to use that information when it comes to marketing her seeds as well. This next part is really just, I often get questions around, this is all very interesting, but what can I do? So depending on who you are and what your interests are, I mean, certainly most of you indicated you were gardeners, which is great. There's a whole bunch of actions that we encourage people to take. We work on a variety of campaigns ourselves, but we also work with other organizations like the Canadian Biotechnology Action Network on things around GMOs, for example. We're also participating a bit on campaigns against the Comprehensive European Trade Agreement, or Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement with Europe. Those types of things. So we often participate in these types of campaigns. But then we also do what I call the fun stuff. So we encourage people to save their own seeds. We talk to people about guerrilla gardening, which is essentially when you take over sort of unused city space and grow things in there, whether for eating or just for sort of making the space more beautiful. We do a lot of work in classrooms, not always directly, but we have put together some educational material for students to use, so stuff like food art, things like that, seed mosaics. So then, in conclusion, this is a quote that was taken from a report that we contributed to as well, the International Agricultural Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science, and Technology, or the IAAAKST, which is so much easier to say. The greatest scope for improving livelihood and equity exists in small-scale, diversified production systems in developing countries. These agroecological farming methods are as productive as conventional and industrial farming methods at lower ecological costs with better chances to adapt to changing environmental and climate conditions, higher resilience, and better performance with respect to enough food. So we have lots of time for questions, if anybody wanted to know something.
I just was curious how you decide what countries you're going to and what town.
Sure.
And what,
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, the way it works out is we have a relationship with someone already. So the example of Honduras, we knew the professor who was working with them. In Bolivia, our executive director had done work there. That's a lot of how it gets started, is very much personal connections. And again, that's how we end up selecting the communities where we're working as well.
So do they have to meet a certain criteria, or is it just?
Somewhat. I will say we haven't picked, or we haven't started a new relationship with a country in like 8 years. We're a fairly small organization, and we don't have as much money as, say, Oxfam or someone like that, so there's not a lot of opportunities for us to expand. But I know that there is some conversation around working in Peru now. There's someone that we've been talking with there for quite some time. So, in terms of direct criteria, I can't personally speak to that too much. I would say, like, if there's a need and if there's a particular project that we feel that we could fund, then we would probably look into it. A lot of our funding, or about half of our funding, comes from CEDA, the Canadian International Development Agency, and a lot of times they put qualifications on what you can use that funding for. So, you know, it may be a certain region, it may be a certain type of project, so that's also a deciding factor.
I'm sorry, I'm King Laban. For what does USC stand?
It used to be the Unitarian Service Committee, yeah, but now we just use USC, just to confuse me.
Would you consider working with the native peoples in Canada?
Yeah, so with the Beltran Initiative, we are, so the way we've done it so far is we've worked with a cross-section of farmers from across the country who are already doing seed saving and who are already doing seed saving workshops as well. So we tried to develop a sort of national curriculum to make sure that the information that someone's getting in Prince George is the same as the information someone's getting in Truro, so that, you know, there's no lack of information there. Part of that conversation was around Indigenous knowledge, and there are communities that are very, very good at seed saving, and we've worked with them a little bit, and we're looking forward to doing more of that as well. Yeah, I know that in BC and I think it was in Ontario as well, there was 2 people that we were talking with on that project so far.
Are you running into any government or corporate resistance in terms of starting to take some actions in Canada?
We've only been working on this project for about 6 months, so nothing so far. There are definitely policy challenges for farmers. Everything from varieties being deregistered, like red flag wheat, for example, to things around where you can sell seeds, like trying to sell from Canada to the US and vice versa. Any challenges there as well. In terms of corporate stuff, nothing yet. No one has contacted us yet about any of this. I guess we're being careful, not to. I mean, I guess I can explain a little bit our policy position. I mean, we don't use GMOs, but for the most part, we don't take a lot of direct action against GMOs. We support people who are, like CBAN. So we're not, you know, sticking our necks out and saying, "Hey, you." So that's maybe helping a little bit. But we'll see what the next couple of years will bring if this project continues to go forward. We might run into some trouble. You can imagine that.
How do you decide what seeds are worth trying to save? So if I have to go to Kettle now and buy seed that was
Yes.
not a hybrid,
Yes.
would that then be something that's worth saving? Or
I would think so. I mean, if it grows well for you, if it does well, I would, yeah, definitely.
it doesn't have to be something that you don't
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, I guess there's two things. I mean, certainly keep the varieties that work for you, but as I mentioned earlier, you also want to make sure to preserve those land races or the heritage races as well. So you wouldn't want to save the variety that works for you at the exclusion of those other varieties. So for you as a gardener, definitely like save what works for you and use that from year to year. The seed savers and the seed vendors, however, are going to be interested in doing a greater diversity of seeds.
Do you have educational resources on your website for how to save seeds and
A
the
little
qualities
bit.
that you need to look for?
Yeah,
that type
so
of thing?
we actually, we have a number of seed vendors who make donations of seeds to us every year, and I have some at our table. For those varieties, we do have seed saving information, but we are working on a bigger document with more information in it. But I know Seeds of Diversity Canada has some of that information as well. They have a great manual that you can buy. It's like $20 or something like that, I think, with a lot of that information. So, we're trying not to reinvent the wheel and copy the information that they already have done a very good job of developing, but working with them and making sure that information is more widely available.
So, just the difference between genetically modified and, like, we do all this cross.
Mm-hmm.
So just maybe
Sure.
speak a bit on that.
Essentially, you can, there's a variety of ways that you can create new plant varieties. One is just to crossbreed. So when you take, one tomato and another tomato and cross-pollinate them and then save that seed, you're going to end up with a new variety. It may or may not be any good. With GMOs, normally what they're doing is they're doing that at the genetic level. So instead of cross-pollinating, they're sort of looking at the genetic material in there and changing that at that level. And the concern is you're doing things that you couldn't do just by cross-pollinating. So you're doing things that would never happen in nature. It could mean taking, cucumber and adding material from, I don't know, carrot, yeah, a carrot, and putting that in there. So you're ending up with something completely different. And so there's a number of concerns around that with, environmental safety, with your own health, all sorts of things, corporate control, everything like that. So that's the main difference. Is that? Oh yeah.
So when I'm going to buy seeds at, let's say, Safeway, how do I know whether those seeds are GMOs or if they're just hybrids?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was reading this blog recently that said that there is one company, a seed company, that sells garden seeds, which is owned by Monsanto.
Mackenzie Seeds.
Okay, well that wasn't actually the one that I was told, but anyway, okay.
That's the one that's around right now. It's
Okay.
in most of the stores in Edmonton.
Which one is that?
She was saying Mackenzie Seeds.
And you have to go through several levels to get to Monsanto, but yeah, they own it.
If you go to the website for Seedy Sunday for this year, there's and you click on other information or extra information or something, there's a list of seed sources if you're concerned about.
Yeah. And I think if the package would have to state that it was genetically modified.
No. It's the same way that you eat genetically modified corn and potatoes all the time and you don't know it. So there's no labeling requirements in Canada. My impression before I had read this blog was that most garden seeds were not genetically modified, that they were just hybrids. So I think what's happening here is Monsanto is buying these companies so that they can do genetic modification. My impression is that nothing that we're growing in our gardens, unless you're growing canola and herbicide-resistant wheat, is going to be genetically modified, but it will be hybrids. So if you're concerned about the corporate control of the seeds and the, people like Monsanto and Syngenta owning your seeds, then you might want to look into that kind of information. But if you're more concerned about the health and environmental things, then you're probably okay for now. So it really just depends on why you're interested.
I noticed on your slide there, you were growing quinoa, red quinoa.
Yeah.
And it didn't look very tall.
No.
I tried growing some in my garden, and year before last, I didn't grow any last year before last. It grew quite tall, but it never reached maturity.
Right.
And yet I was told that it would grow here in Canada quite well.
Yeah.
But like it was 6-7 feet tall in my garden.
Really? I didn't think quinoa grew that tall.
But it never reached maturity, and I seeded it quite early. And
yeah.
I was just curious.
Well, I know there
Or
are.
is that red variety a shorter variety?
I'm guessing it is, yeah, I would think so, because I know that I was told that the soil conditions there were really bad, so I'm guessing it's a shorter variety, it takes less energy, less nutrients to grow. That'd be my guess. I'm not sure, where did you get your quinoa seed from?
I got them from a little shop on Salt Spring Island.
Okay,
That's the only place where I could find
yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to see.
But I was just wondering, you know, like I went and bought these seeds. We were there visiting and holidaying and bought these seeds, and then came back and went to Planet Organic and bought some to cook.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why couldn't I grow these?
I don't know. It'd be interesting to try. I recently bought some sorghum seeds this year.
Beg your pardon?
Sorghum.
Oh, sorghum.
Yeah, so curious to see how that does.
Yeah, I read about sorghum growing in Alberta for forage. I never tried it. I'm going to be trying, if you've heard of tillage radish.
Okay.
I'm going to try that this year on some of my land.
Oh, that's great.
And you just plow it under and leave it?
No, it's supposed to frost kill, and the characteristic with it grows about 30 inches long. Like the bulb itself is only about 8 or 9 inches, but then the taproot goes way down about 30 inches. So when it freezes and dies, it leaves a hollow. Also, when it's growing, it brings up nutrients from down below, and it's all up in the top because it's in the bulb. So when the bulb freezes and decays, it leaves all the nutrients in the topsoil, and also leaves vents into the soil so water can percolate out of there. I've got some land that is, well, it's dry, it's this hard, and when it's wet, it's just like plastered mud, you know.
Excuse me, but where did you get those seeds?
Oh, I subscribed to a magazine called Grain News, and there was a guy in there, he was growing them, and they'd come from Pennsylvania, and they were, so I got on the website and I phoned the guy, and we had a good conversation, and they were not genetically modified, but they were crossbred. They picked all these different radishes, and then they finally got the radish that they wanted that would do what they wanted. And so that's what they're using. It works very good for organic people because you get nutrients from down below for your soil, and you're not using fertilizers and things like that. And it's good for grazing. Cattle graze the topsoil. So it's going to work quite well, I think, for me. I'm picking the seeds up on Thursday.
Yeah. So just to finish, I would encourage you to participate in our seed saving survey. So if any of you are saving seeds already, like I said before, we'd love to hear from you and know what kind of support we can give you, if there's anything else that we can help you with in terms of information or resources, so that we can help develop our Canadian programs a little bit better. So I'll just put these here, and if you could also just bring your blue cards back and just leave them at the front, that'd be great.